Egyptians mark the one-year anniversary of the January 25th revolution with the same message that brought down Mubarak last year, the popular demand for the removal of the regime. In Tahrir, thousands began to pack the square in the early morning. Before any of the dozens of marches descended on the square, it was already packed with people, flags, and stages. But here, opinions in the current state of affairs in Egypt varied.
It is also very difficult to agree on a certain group of people in this country right now. So I'm not sure that this is actually the right thing is to call for the army to go right away.
In Mohandesin, nearly 15 miles away from Tahrir, hundreds gathered during the afternoon prayer in preparation to march. Here, many wear black and mask their faces with the smiles of the revolution's many martyrs, including Mustafa Samir Ahmed. Sitting quietly in the middle of the rally is Faiza Abdulhamid, Mustafa's mother. She holds on to the photograph of her son that has made his face a symbol of national resistance. Then, with a loud roar, the march begins.
Massive demonstration in a town just outside Damascus that's fallen under the control of the opposition Free Syria army. Some suburbs have seen nearly 24 killed in the past 2 days and buildings heavily shelled. RT Sarah Firth has exclusive footage from the besieged town.
When we got there, we were met by the Free Syrian army who now have control of that area, and they showed us around. They took us into the centre. There was this absolutely massive anti-government demonstration going on. There was a funeral procession going on at the same time as well. So we were able to speak to the people who were living in this area, to speak to some of the Free Syrian army members as well, because of course very little is known about who exactly these people are. Really, it made it very, very clear to us just how divided the country is now becoming. Whilst we were there was sort of a moment of confusion. We did hear gunshots in the background. Some of the crowd got nervous and started running, at which point we were all sort of told it was safer to leave, and we then left that area. A very tense situation, certainly a very dangerous situation for the civilians in this area as well. You go to these suburbs, you can see bullet holes in the walls. It's not really clear in so much of the country now who exactly has control. The fact that this is now happening in a suburb just 15 minutes or so from the city centre here in Damascus really goes to show you just how much the situation here is now deteriorating. Well, Russia's made its position extremely clear that they're not going to back the Western resolution whilst it doesn't rule out the sanctions, the military intervention. They've put their own proposal forward, and you've had this sort of back and forth with neither side's really being able to come to some form of agreement. I mean, the big sticking point here really is the military intervention. You've got so many different factions in the country. It is, even whilst you're here in the country, very, very hard to really understand who exactly is in charge where and who has the voice of the people, because this was originally a peaceful protest movement. You've now got increasingly armed opposition groups.
Fighting has broken out in Libya between supporters of former leader Muammar Gaddafi and forces loyal to the new government. The head of the National Transitional Council has warned that the country is on the verge of returning to a state of civil war. Let's get more details on this now from RT's Maria Fanoshina standing by live. Maria, good to see you. So it might seem to some that Libya is reverting to parts of what we saw last year, to the mid to late months of 2011, with tribal factions here, loyalists going against opposition. How serious is this talk of civil war?
Rory, this is very serious. In the last few days, the situation in Libya has been very tense and very dangerous, actually, indeed, with NTC, National Transitional Council, Libya's interim government protests and clashes between the pro-government fighters and forces still loyal to the ousted leader Muammar Gaddafi taking place in different places throughout Libya. On Monday, we did receive reports that Gaddafi loyalists actually managed to take control over the city of Bani Walid, southeast of the capital, Tripoli, once known as Gaddafi's main stronghold, and did also manage to raise green flag at one of the gates of the town. Green flag, symbol of Gaddafi's rule. And local officials have been reporting about at least 5 anti-sea people killed in this violence. So as we can see, this is very symbolic. Bani Walid, as I've just said, has always been considered Gaddafi's main stronghold, and since the beginning of the uprising, people from this particular area, from Bani Walid, have been volunteered to fight for Gaddafi, to die for the former colonel everywhere throughout Libya. And once it was said to be the stronghold for Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam. So that's very symbolic that the violence erupted at this level, at this serious level, in this particular area.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Friday, January 27th, 2012, and I'm Darko. Alright, so you just saw it there, that's in Egypt, and I just saw a video, The Power of Nightmares, and it goes through the whole extremist Muslim movement and the whole neoconservative movement, how they started kind of with the same ideology, and now they've been converged. Of course, they don't put it in there and tie the pieces together. This is all being done and orchestrated by the same central source, like the same bankers that created communism. They created both factions to play them off against each other. So in Egypt, they're going to be faced with what? Either the Muslim Brotherhood or a Western-backed Mubarak style. And as of right now, you know, if you look in this video, check this out, it'll actually go in there and say back in the, what was it, the 70s, 80s in Egypt, the military actually intervened when the Muslim Brotherhood, the thing about the Muslim Brotherhood, it sounds very radical, but actually all they wanted to do was make sure that their leaders were basically going off the Quran. They didn't want them just to be doing whatever they're doing. Now, I can say it's a theocracy, but for whatever it's worth, there was a lot of people that were Muslims that were just kind of conservative. They weren't extremists. They just didn't want to be, how would you say, majorly influenced by Western society, Burger King, McDonald's, over-liberalization of women and stuff like that. So there is a strife in there. And the Muslim Brotherhood, basically what they wanted to do, if I understood it correctly, was to not use force like, quote, Al-Qaeda, but to do it politically and go about that way. But what happened? Ooh, the military got in and they intervened and they stopped the elections from occurring. So I question what side the military is on. I think they're on the U.S.-Israeli side. So like that woman said, you know, oh yeah, I think we should keep the military. So I don't know. It's kind of a sticky situation. But then you saw in what? In Syria. Who are these people? Well, remember I covered this before. They're actually based out of Turkey. That's where the opposition is based off of. And who's supplying them? Israel and the United States. And it's intelligence operated a coup. It's a regime change. So now this is a big deal that they're taking that town in Syria. So you have that going on, and then what? Green Libya strikes back at Bani Walid. Well, that's not the only place. There's actually a video right here that you can check out. I'll post a link for this as well. Benghazi goes green too, so go in there and check that out. Okay, then from Libya SOS, Libyan Liberation Frontline News from the 26th, the Libyan Green Army has been operational on the Eastern Front, gaining 11% territory in the past 1 week. 1,200 rebels they're basically mercenary terrorists, is what they are, just like I think in Syria too, have been eliminated in the Eastern Front. And see, that's the goal. They just want the outside interest to get a regime change. They just create all this chaos, right? And then they create this, quote, civil war. But it's not really a civil war. It's mercenary terrorists being hired to come inside the country and create instability so then outside forces can come in. And so they're talking about eliminating in the Eastern Front around Derna to Benghazi, mainly from the radical international jihadist movement. In the Western Front, Green Army pushed rebels further into the sea, capturing 2 major ports. It goes on there and it says in major military operations around Misrata and at the coast of Libya, Green Army found bodies of 17 Somali immigrants at the coast of Misrata. Cause of death remained to be established, and investigation was not immediately carried out since it was a heavy fighting zone. All right, then next up we have Free Libya, shamed by new torture claims. So Libya slips back towards the barbarism of Gaddafi, which is a bunch of BS because they found mass graves, mostly from what? From the terrorist rebels. And the same thing happened in the Ivory Coast, and the same thing will probably happen in Somalia too. And you'll never see the mass graves of those done by the Western forces, the occupying, invading forces. U.S. outrage at Egypt bars Americans from leaving. So 6 Americans working for publicly funded U.S. organizations promoting democracy. Ooh, the democracy business. Check that video out. And also check out that video that I showed you in the beginning about the nightmares, because they talk about this promoting democracy in Egypt has been barred from leaving the country, provoking angry demands. So there's a lot going on in Egypt right now. Remember this, 21 tons of U.S. tear gas order to Egypt has been blocked at the Suez port, so they're not totally on board with the West right now. 2 months into Pakistan's blockade of NATO supplies crossing into Afghanistan, thousands of trucks are crowding at the port in Karachi. So blockade from Pakistan threatens NATO trucks to be stranded. Well, they have a lot of reason to be pissed off or peed off. Pakistan heart drugs, faulty batch kills 70 in Lahore. 70 people are believed to have died over the past 3 weeks because of faulty heart drugs. Also, they've been drone bombing them as well. Lobbying, U.S. lures Pakistan with cheaper gas than Iran. So remember I talked about undercutting oil prices as far as the embargo on Iran goes. Then 6 Pakistanis gunned down by Iranian border guards. Remember Hamid Gul, the former ISI of Pakistan, he's talking about how they carried out false flags for the Western powers in India and stuff like that, right? And what happened, I think this could have been a false flag, basically. You know, it could have been an ISI dressed up as some suspicious people, and then kind of, you know, making some ruckus in order to get them to not do trade. India, Pakistan closer to oil deal import from Turkmenistan. So India and Pakistan now. Then look at this, India to pay gold instead of dollars for Iranian oil. Then look at this, we have Russia to supply 7.7 billion worth of arms to India. So Lebanon rejects Syria opposition request, called on Libya to dissolve the Lebanese Syrian Higher Council. But it goes on and it says Lebanon's government, has declared that it will keep to its normalized ties with Damascus while being neutral with regards to conflicts between Syrians themselves. Remember, these are all on the list. Lebanon, Syria for regime change, according to the general. And the project for a new American century. Poll 35% of Americans support Iran military strikes. So 35% of Americans. Then of those 35%, 56% of American Jews think the U.S. should strike Iran. It could be because they're closer. But it says here, Israel calls for tougher Iran sanctions, more tougher after the oil embargo. Then we have this, Iran can turn off oil tap to EU. Like I said, initially the prices will raise, and then they should go down because they're going to undercut Iran. U.S. has arrested Iranian scientists buying high-tech U.S. lab equipment. I read in the comment boards, it's actually something that you can get at like Radio Shack. Iranian student activist shot dead in Texas. That's right. Usually we have here U.S. targets scientists to pressure Iran. See, that's the thing. They arrest them, but they usually just shoot them and kill them or whatever. They get in a, quote, accident. So they're targeting their scientists. But U.S. considering airstrikes, not invasion of Iran. Remember what I said before, based off the research that I've done on Iran and striking Iran through the media, is what? Is that they're going to do strategic airstrikes, not so much of a ground troop invasion of their facilities and that. And then also what? Color revolutions. But then what? They're going to be assassinating generals. Well, now they're doing their scientists. So car bomb hits Syria security checkpoint, killing at least 6 Syrian troops. Then CIA to pull officer from NYPD after internal probe that found the agency established its unprecedented collaboration with city police. Then we have former LAPD police chief and collaborator Bill Bratton casually reveals that LAPD coordinated with the CIA. U.S. to expand networks of secret bases and expanding networks of drones by 30% and more special op teams. Like I've said, get rid of the human element. New drone has no pilot anywhere, so who's accountable? Using drones to capture environmental violations makes perfect sense. Environmentalism or eco-fascism seems to be a perfect use for the new breed of drones. But scientists say there's no need to panic about global warming. Maybe they'll be assassinated. And billionaires at Davos talk about income inequality. That's funny because, remember, we redistribute the world's wealth by climate policy, says the UN. Thank you, and God bless.